All right, defenders, welcome back. Let's talk the news. So what is happening in Minnesota? Well, Waltz's fraud continues on with him literally stating live on camera that expect to see more fraud.
Oh, I think there's more. And look, we've got organized crime ring in Minnesota. I think it's been going on for years.
From feeding our future to autism programs to housing stabilization, Minnesota taxpayers are victims of more than $1 billion of fraud. Do you think there was not enough skepticism for too long in state agencies that were overseeing these programs?
I think it's an unfortunate situation, but yeah, I think you need to be more skeptical now in this world. I think the COVID pandemic and the releasing of some of the rules, the relaxing of the rules, fostered this.
But that aside, since we are still primarily a gun and firearms rights channel and a training channel, we're going to look at something that's happening right here in St. Paul. St. Paul is currently trying to go full Chicago, banning firearms from their city. But let's pick it apart and take a look.
So the city council, they're expected to introduce a gun violence prevention ordinance. Bill Keller live for us in the capital city with the very latest on what they're proposing.
Ordinance that would ban public possession of assault weapons, large capacity magazines, and binary triggers. This would be within the city limits only. Last week, though, St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter, along with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry, they renewed their call on state lawmakers to either pass their own stronger gun reforms statewide or repeal that preemption law that prohibits cities from passing their own. In response, the Minnesota Gun Caucus said that passing local laws would be vulnerable to court challenge, saying while it may earn headlines in the praise of anti-gun activists, they say it is not serious governance. Still, St. Paul is going to move forward this afternoon.
Now, the St. Paul mayor had recently come out, Mayor Carter, and stated, our children, our families, and our governor are calling on us to make a choice, to action on assault weapons. Really, what he's getting at is that because Waltz doesn't have any of the votes in the House or the Senate for the state, that a municipality such as St. Paul is going to take the rights into their own hand. In fact, the Star Tribune actually ran an article on this, that why don't more municipalities take it upon themselves to enact these laws, essentially going a full Chicago, banning firearms from the city. And as you have seen with the city of Chirac, that's really going over well. The 5 stipulations boil down to these things. The first one being an assault weapons ban, a large capacity magazine ban, or what they deem large capacity magazine, and banning binary triggers from the city. In addition, it would prohibit ghost guns from being in the city, and that any firearm that doesn't have a serial number will be required to have a serial number. It would also restrict firearms further for the state, and specifically the city, going so far as to ban them from libraries, municipal buildings, and any other city-controlled facility and infrastructure. This would include parks and recreation centers too. They require clear signage in front of these buildings talking about these stipulations. And last, this one's kind of the kicker, because the law can't really take effect until the state itself repeals a specific act. Now, and what this one is, define enforcement authority and penalties to take effect only if the state repeals or amends the preemptive law for the state of Minnesota. Now, the preemptive law for the state of Minnesota essentially establishes that, 1, no government authority or employee acting under the power of government authority may restrict, first off, when it comes to carry law, may restrict where you can or cannot carry your firearm. And that the only laws that stipulate where you can and can't are federal and state laws alone. We call this state exclusivity. Now, the actual preemptive clause itself states the following. Minnesota Statute 4071-633 states that the legislature hereby preempts all authority of local governments to regulate firearms, ammunition, or their respective components. And this is what is referred to as the express preemptive statutes. Okay, and so this was also further reinforced by the Minnesota Supreme Court as well. Now, Lilly v. Minneapolis established that a city may not do indirectly what it was forbidden to do directly. Now, this ruling coming out of 1995 established that really a municipality may not create an ordinance that has a enact date. So if that ordinance would be invalid today, it does not just become magically valid at a later date because you put a undeclared specified amount of time of when that ordinance would actually pass. Now, the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus has certainly picked up on this, and Ben Dorr, the actually president of the organization, is already putting forth and has lawsuits ready to rock and ready to go should St. Paul try to pass this ordinance. Now, they haven't done it yet, but this is on the docket. They do want to get this thing passed. And as I've just stated, with both city and Minnesota Supreme Court previous rulings, so precedents already set, they would not be allowed to do this, and so it would be a very easy win legally once it goes to a lawsuit. Not only that, but the Minnesota Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals both upheld that preempted ordinances are void at inception, regardless of when they were enforced. In fact, that court case was used to strike down previous attempts to change Minnesota carry permits. So in the end, what does this mean? St. Paul has no ability to actually institute and create ordinances that would regulate and control a citizen's ability to carry firearms in the city of St. Paul. They are completely forbidden from doing this by both Supreme Court rulings, Minnesota Supreme Court rulings, by the Court of Appeals, and in addition to previous cited court cases with Lilly versus the city of Minneapolis. Now, does this mean that this is where they're going to stop? No. That's why you do need to get involved on a local level. We talk about this a lot on this channel happening lately. Go be involved. Go join, get on the school board, run for local offices, and get yourself put into these positions to be a part of the community. And don't forget, what you're doing is you're planting trees whose shade you'll never know. They're not for you. You're setting up the rights and freedoms for those that come after you, your children and grandchildren. And that's what's important in all this, because evil really doesn't rest. And as we're watching with Waltz's big push when it comes to firearm banning, just going gangbusters just against the whole state, that it's not going to just stop with St. Paul and the Minnesota Supreme Court saying, no, you can't do that. Here's a lawsuit for the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, okay? They will keep trying to find ways to ban, to stop, and to remove your ability to protect yourself and to be a defender, okay? That's really what these bans are about. They're about control. They're not about safety. So get involved with that, and if you can't get involved and run for a local office or something like that, help out, volunteer with the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. Get involved with them. Donate to them. Donate to the FPC, the Firearm Policy Coalition. These groups are doing really heavy lifting when it comes to protecting the rights of citizens, not just here in Minnesota, though, Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus is right here in Minnesota, but the FPC is working nationally to restore rights. And they have been a big boon when it comes to taking down piece by piece the NFA and, helping try to get reciprocity across the finish line for the country, and going against some of the most egregious laws in the country that California has enacted. They're big on trying to strike those things down and working for the common man. So anyways, it's Mike with ADS. Thanks for sticking around. Remember, stay prepared, not scared. God bless and good night, everybody.